Welcome back to the last video in the Create with Code animal feeder project. In the last one we worked on, we did an instantiation so that our player could shoot food, and it has a move forward script so that prefab moves forward. We added that move forward script to our animals, and then we made it so that we have a spawn manager that randomly selects one of these integers, one of these index numbers, and then places it at a random position across this x-axis up here and spawns it into the world when we press S. For this last video, we're going to clean up a few things. One, we don't want to make it so that we spawn when we press S. We wanted to do it on a timer. So we're going to basically build an in-game timer to call that method. And then we're going to make it so that when we collide, the animals and the food collide, that they get destroyed. So let's go ahead and jump straight back into your spawn manager script. Now, right now, we are doing basically a lot of work inside of our void update. Every frame it's checking to see if we press this S key, then it will do these lines of codes. But there's a much better way of doing that, and that's building our own method. If you remember, methods are things that typically start with the word void, and for now they start with void. There's some other types, we'll get to them later on. And they are where the action happens. So line 17, if I want something to happen in the start, the action I would want to have occur would be in line 17. And variables, remember, sit at the top, and they're just hold information for us. They're things that we're going to need to use in our method. So we're going to build a new method to do this so that we don't have to check every update. It will happen on its own or on a repeat. So I'm going to go below my void update. So the last bracket of my script is line 30. So I'm going to go after the bracket on line 29, outside of that void update, create a little space, and I'm going to build my own method. I'm going to call it void. I'm going to call it spawn animal. An argument. All right, now I'm getting an error because I need to go to the next line and open up those curly brackets. And mine is sort of brown because I haven't actually used it. Like if you look here, my start method isn't really being called. It just sort of browns out, I guess, it's because I don't have a reference to it yet, but we were going to use it. And instead of using the S key, I want whenever I call spawn animal, whenever I use this phrase, that I will do all these things in here. So I'm just going to take all of this out. The int line, so 25, 26, 27, int, the vector 3, and the instantiation line. Make sure I get all of it. On the MacBook, I'm going to hit Command X to cut the cut. And line 31, I'm going to hit Command V to paste. And I don't really need this if statement, this conditional inside of the update now. I'm going to save. So we just made our own method that whenever we call it, it will do this, but we haven't actually called it anywhere. So we're going to do something that's called an invoke repeating. I want this to start putting animals out, start calling this method at the start of the game. So I want to do it inside of my void start. Void start, I'm going to type in invoke, and I have a couple invokes here. I have a normal invoke, and I have an invoke repeating, and I want to always put these, call this method, like keep spawning. So I'm going to call invoke repeating and open up an argument. And invoke repeating needs to know three things: the name, when to start, and how often to repeat. So I'll write that up over above it for me. So you don't have to type this out. This is just for your notes. So invoke repeating needs what method, a delay, or I'm trying to think of a way to say that. When to start, and then repeat, or rate to repeat. So how often to do it. So, okay, I don't want you to get confused between this and instantiation. So I'm going to try to make it super clear. On our player controller, we have an instantiation. This clones objects that we have in the project. It needs to know what object, where it should start, and what its rotation is. So this is based on an object you put in the world. An invoke repeating repeats a method. an action, not an object. So even though this is spawning something into the world, the instantiation down here is what is copying that object. The invoke repeating is repeating the process of copying. But it could be a bunch of things. It can repeat a method that makes sounds and all kinds of stuff. So remember, invoke repeating is what method? So the method we would want to repeat is this one called SpawnAnimal. Now, since this is a proper name, a string, it needs to go inside quotation marks. SpawnAnimal. And close quotations and a comma. Now, how you spell this has got to match this name because it is looking for this specific name right here. So if you misspell this or you do a capital M on accident, it won't work. It needs to be spelled exactly the same. So we now know the string method name, which is called SpawnAnimal. Now we need to know when we want to start. And I think I want to wait just a few seconds for this to begin. Let's have it wait 1 second. I could just put a 1 here and put a comma, but we don't like to put numbers down here. So I'm going to create a new number up here. And I want to call it a public so I can change it in the inspector. Let's do a float. No, let's do an int. Let's do an int. Let's just stay with whole numbers, number of seconds. And I will call this start delay. How about that? So how long before when the game starts to when this starts repeating this process? I'll make it equal to 1. Like that. And then the next thing it needs to know, the invoke repeating needs to know, is how many seconds does it need to repeat? And maybe I'll make it send out an animal every 2 seconds for now. So I'll go public int, and I'll call it repeat rate. And I'll make this equal to 2. Put a semicolon. So down here where the 1 is, I'm going to replace that with start delay. And inside of how often I want to repeat, I'll put repeat rate. And put a semicolon at the end. And save that. So what we just did was an invoke repeating. At the start, it will start calling the SpawnAnimal after the first second, and then every 2 seconds after that. So let's go test that out. Give it a chance to compile. Let me look at my spawn manager real quick and see if I see those variables. And I do. Start delay, repeat rate. So we should see when I press play, it will wait 1 second, then it'll start randomly putting animals out, and every 2 seconds repeat that process. Yep. 1, 2, 1, 2. There you go. It's running automatically without us pressing S. So that's the power of an invoke repeating, something that you want to continuously do, and you can call that whenever you like. We did it in the start for this one. If you did in the update, it would go crazy. Please don't do that. It could probably break your game down. All right. So the next thing we want to do is trigger our colliders, so that when we hit with our food, or for me, pizza, then we'll destroy those objects. So let's go find, we know that our animals need the collider, because that's the one thing that's hitting, and then the food is the other collider. So let's go to our prefabs folder. Boom, prefabs. Cow. And sure enough, we do not have a collider. So please make sure you go into open prefab right here, and we're going to add a component, box collider. Not 2D, just box collider. And if you hit edit collider, you're going to see that the collider is probably very, very small. At least it is for me. So you might have to kind of zoom in a little bit. I use Q to kind of rotate my camera. Hit edit collider again so I can see it. And it's got little handles. And you're going to want to make this collider big enough to cover up that whole animal. So let me do the first one with you here. It's good to get in the habit of spinning around. See, I noticed that my guy is not in the center. So you have these values here. I'm going to put my center at 0 on the X. Use these to make sure that you can snap back to the center of what you need. I can drag this out here. That looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. And I like to err on the side of being just a little bit bigger than I need to be. So that looks fine for me. And make sure that you set your collider to is trigger, because we don't actually want them to hit and bounce off each other in the world. We just want it so that whenever the pizza strikes the animal, or the food strikes the animal, then it will call an event in your script. So that's going to be an is trigger collider. So I'll hit that right here. Make sure that is the case. And then I will Command S just to save and hit go back. And I should see, if I click on this prefab now, I should see that I have a box collider with that information. If you want to do this 2 more times with your horse and your moose, I'm going to do that really quickly, and I'll see you when I finish that. My moose was much bigger than I expected, but it still works fine for it. And it really doesn't matter how tall it is, because our pizza's kind of coming in low. But just to get in a good habit, we went ahead and put the colliders around everything else. We want to also add a collider to your pizza. So I'm going to do the same thing here with open prefab, add component, box collider, editing that. And I think our pizza needs to have the is trigger as well. Yeah. Now your pizza also, or your food, I keep on saying pizza because that's what I'm using. I apologize. Your food, we need to also add a rigid body. For a on trigger event to happen, one of the objects does have to have a rigid body, the physics component. Just the way that the colliders work in Unity. So I'm going to add the rigid body, but I don't want gravity to work on this object, because if it does, it's just going to fall through the floor. So it's really important that while you're inside your prefab, there's an option here to say use gravity. You uncheck it. And this is, making sure that the event does trigger. I'm going to save, Command S, my pizza, and go back out. So we need to add one last script here. So we're going to go to Assets, Scripts, and the name of the script is going to be called, I'm just going to call it HIT for simplicity's sake, HIT, HIT. And the name does match. I'm seeing a lot of you guys miss up the name and come back here and rename, and you're forgetting to check this part. Please make sure you check that. Open that up. And it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to make a new method. We don't need the update or the start. And we're just going to say void on trigger, enter. It'll automatically create this method for you. And we're not going to use tags this time like we've done before. We're just going to say whenever I hit something else with a collider. Our ground doesn't have a collider, so we're not really concerned about that in this game. So we can just hit, the only thing it should be hitting is the pizza. So we're going to make it pretty straightforward. We're going to say if I hit something else, destroy myself. Destroy this game object. I'm going to save that and see if this works. So let's try this with the animals. Prefab, go to my cow. Open that prefab. Add component, and let's add our hit script. Horse, open prefab, add component, hit. Moose, open prefab, hit. Make sure I save and just get out of here, and I should press play, and let's see if I hit my pizza, does it work? Oops. There you go. So the pizza is now destroying the animals. Now, but our pizza still keeps going though after it hits them, and we don't want to accidentally shoot other animals that are coming, towards us. So I'm going to add one more line of code to my hit script. I'm going to make it so that if I put the hit on my pizza, Oh, actually, we don't have to add it to our pizza. Let's just change one line of code inside of here. Instead of just destroying ourselves on our hit script, line 9, I'm going to press return. I'm going to say destroy open argument other dot game object. So other comes from this name right here. So what the other thing that I hit, I want to destroy it as well. That's what other dot game object does, destroy. Yeah. So save that. And so now our pizza should be destroyed when I make a collision with our animals. I'm sorry, yeah, with our animals. And yeah, the pizza that hit the animal was destroyed. All right, so that's the end of this prototype. I'm going to have a video right after this that will give you some challenges to try out some things to try to play with. And yeah, I will see you in the challenges video.